providing this needed insight into areas of citizen interest and concern so that the council can formulate policies and programs that are going to address the needs of the citizen. And they do that by receiving your input on what's important to the citizen group and to citizens generally. There's a broad range of ideas and expertise that you bring in your service, which council then uses to make its own informed decisions. You have authority per Article 2 of Chapter 74 to provide advice and opinions and to assist in several areas that the Park Department covers and that the Park Board covers in particular, including budgeting, which is extremely important as we approach our two-year budget process. And council will be counting on you to advocate and to make clear what's important to the board and to the citizens as a whole. Certainly, staff still will make their own recommendations. I'm sure the manager will make his own recommendations, but council values your input as well, and that's extremely important to set that out. Additional services, there's a slide that shows some of the additional services that you provide to staff, council, the public as well. Again, oftentimes those recommendations that you're providing will be, well, they'll always be helpful, they'll always be appreciated by council. Oftentimes they're going to mirror what the staff has submitted, they're going to mirror what the manager has submitted, but sometimes they may not, and that's okay. That's part of the process. But council will take all of that and hopefully create some kind of an amalgam, create a mixture or compression of all of those ideas and parts of them. One thing that I've reminded all the boards is council listens and they're concerned about what you say. They may not always agree with you, they may not always take your advice and recommendation, but most of the time they do. But I can guarantee you that they always listen to it and they do appreciate that as well. Turning quickly to the Iowa Open Meetings Act, it's important for the board to remember that you are a public board. All boards and commissions in Iowa are subject to the Open Meetings Act, and that includes the Park and Recreation Board. So any gathering, whether in person or electronically, whether formally or informally, where you discuss items that come within your purview, that are within your subject matter, as a board, that's a meeting when there's a majority of your board members that are present. That means that public notice is required if you're texting, emailing, Skyping, or any other type of media and conducting business. That meeting has to be posted, has to be attended, has to be available to the public. So that can be a meeting. After notice, the meeting obviously has to be conducted in open session unless there's a reason to go into closed session. Confidential matters can go into closed session once there's a proper roll call for that. Real estate, personnel matters, things like that. Obviously, that's not something that this board is going to encounter frequently, but we let you know that so that you understand what happens when there's a problem with the Open Meetings Act or compliance with the Open Meetings Act. We obviously encourage you to comply with the Open Meetings Act all the time. It can get really pricey because you serve on a public board, you're subject to the Open Meetings Act. There's a fine mechanism that's built in for violations of the Open Meetings Act, and that's something that the city cannot reimburse you for, cannot indemnify you for. That's a personal cost. So that's why it's really important that we always follow the act. That cost is not less than $100 and not more than $500 for an unknowing violation. It's not less than $1,000 nor more than $2,500 for a knowing violation of the act. When in doubt, ask your attorney. Your attorney understands the Open Meetings Act. She can explain things to you and for you, and most importantly, not only will she give you good advice and keep you out of trouble that way, but there is a provision in the Act, what's called a safe harbor, that allows you to ask the attorney and get written advice back or public advice at the meeting that the closed session is appropriate, and then you have no liability once that advice has been given. So when in doubt, ask your staff attorney. Council demands excellence from its staff, from its administrative staff, and council expects excellence in performance from its boards as well. This board is an excellent board, and they really appreciate, as I said, your performance throughout. I've got just a quick checklist there of how you can make sure that you guarantee excellence in performance. Most important is the first item: show up, attend the meetings, and if you can, prepare for the meetings, read the materials, read the agenda, understand it, know what's going on, That's the single most important thing that you can do. Make sure that if you have your board, for example, it has significant responsibilities for potential subcommittee action in the city code itself. And so if you're on a subcommittee, complete your tasks, discharge your responsibilities to council and your fellow board members. And certainly if you have any ideas for improving performance of this board, kindly share them with your board members at an open meeting, of course, or with council or staff. That would be appreciated as well. And finally, your attorney, she's here to provide you legal representation. She's going to give you advice and counsel on matters that come before the board. She's potentially will comment on agenda items. Some agenda items she may not comment on. And don't read anything into her comment on what she says or which items she talks about and which items she doesn't. She's going to give you legal advice and procedural advice on matters that come before the board. She'll try to alert you to pitfalls and other problems that you may encounter. I don't think this is a problem with this board. It's my understanding it's not. But I can tell you with some boards, they want the attorney to make the decision. She's not going to make the decision for you. She's just going to help facilitate you all making that decision. That's why they pay you the big bucks when the tough decisions come your way as the park board. Again, I appreciate the time this evening. Council appreciates your service. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them, but otherwise that's all I have. Thanks again.
Thank you so much. Okay. Have we had a chance to take a look at the agenda for the evening? Do we have any changes or additions to the agenda? May I ask for approval of the agenda as submitted?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Approval of the minutes of the October 22nd Park and Recreation Board meeting. Are there any additions or corrections to those minutes? Hearing none, may I have a motion for approval?
I'll move.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, on to the director's report. We have a very brief director's report tonight. We'll start with Marlene Anderson, and she has a prop here to talk about.
Chair Nolan, members of the board, Marlene Anderson, Park and Recreation Supervisor. Just wanted to tell you about an opportunity that we have to decorate for the holiday season. It's both something that you can, Rebecca? Oh, sorry.
Cemetery.
There we go. I have a prop and I have a visual. Just wanted to tell you about the wreaths that we have available. They went on sale actually yesterday. City Source had an article in it that was just arriving in residences on Friday. And it speaks to the wreath sales that we have. It's a 28-inch mixed green wreath. As you can see, there are 5 different types of greens in it. And they're available for sale for $25 for the wreath itself. And you can add the option of the easel for $5. You can add the option of the bow for $5. Total of $35 if you purchase it as I have it here on display today. And you can either purchase it and take it home or take it to work or whatever for decoration, or our cemetery staff will locate them in a Des Moines Municipal Cemetery. We actually have had people come to pick them up and take them to other cemeteries other than Des Moines Municipal Cemetery. So I do want to stress that fact. So they're available while supplies last. Approximately the next 2 weeks we'll have them on sale, so you can either call in to our Glendale office at, and of course we have 7 cemeteries, but the office for the municipal cemeteries is at Glendale Cemetery. And you can call in or you can stop in and pick one up and take it home, take it out yourself, or ask us to locate it for you. And so our sales officially begin on Saturday because our staff will not be there on Thursday and Friday. You could stop in tomorrow, you could call tomorrow, but just for clarification purposes, best to think of Friday, or Saturday, I'm sorry. So for about the next 2 to 3 weeks while supplies last. Thank you very much. Any questions?
Next on your report is it's a unique way for us to bring a tour to you. As you know, as some of your experienced board members, that every fall we try to do a tour to show you some of the recent completed projects we've done with the city's tax dollars out in the field, so capital construction. And we also try to show you some of the things that are coming down the path that we need to start working on. And this year, due to a variety of issues of trying to schedule election season, new board members, we also take the foundation there. They have new board members. It was a very difficult time to pull this off. So we are committed to getting that tour back on schedule. So what I'm about to show you in less than a couple minutes here is what we usually spend a whole afternoon out driving around the city talking about. So this is our best way to bring this to you. If you watch the video that Jen's had a great job in leading for us.
In 2013, the Parks and Recreation Department was able to maximize our limited capital improvement budget to complete several high-impact projects. Our team worked extensively with neighborhood groups throughout the planning process to ensure we met citizen needs and expectations. While we are pleased with the progress we have been able to make, we have much further to go. As you can see, numerous Park Department projects across Des Moines lack the millions of dollars in funds to complete them. These projects include a wide variety of park system amenities, everything from cemeteries to playgrounds, trails, and community centers. Our team has been successful in seeking alternative funding such as grants, sponsorships, and partnerships, but this still leaves a significant deficit. We are looking forward to working with the Park and Recreation Board to develop new and creative ways to move our department forward.
So the video wasn't meant to be all-inclusive to show you everything. It was just meant to give you a picture of what we're looking at coming down the path. We're very thankful for the dollars that the City Council does appropriate to us to do capital projects. And of course, we would always love to have more, but we also take our dollars, and we also have public-private partnerships that we've been very successful in the past in moving things forward. A couple quick points to stress that point would be at the zoo. You know, we found a way to move the zoo to a private foundation, and now the zoo is not relying on the city for any dollars anymore. So we need to look at public-private partnerships in the world of parks and recreation going forward to stretch that limited resource even further for our community. Again, I hope you can get a 2-minute glimpse of what we're working on here, and I'll need your input later on. We'll get that on the capital budget process, but just to show you a brief picture of where we're at right now. With no questions, we'll move on. Matt Salvatore, our recreation manager, is going to talk about our golf courses. Just because the snow is beginning to fly doesn't mean we stop operating our golf courses. They program for a variety of reasons and a variety of great activities, so he's going to briefly talk about that.
Chair Nolan, members of the Park and Recreation Board, I'm Matt Salvatore, interim recreation manager. There's many activities that take place at the golf courses around the year. I'm just going to run through those briefly for you. Maybe. This year, we had over 88,000 rounds of golf played at all 3 municipal courses. Blank will be available for winter play when the temperature is 40 degrees or above and the wind chill is above 40 degrees. Rentals, they are very popular. The clubhouses are for rentals throughout the year, especially holiday parties and weddings. All 3 courses offer that opportunity. Sledding is very popular at Waveland and Bright Grandview. They got great sledding hills there. It's open to the public when there's 4 inches of uniform snow. We have a new program called the Des Moines Bags League, started this fall. We're moving it indoors this winter at Bright Grandview Golf Course. Starts January 8th. Teams of 2 people consisting of adults over the age of 18 will compete on Wednesdays for 6 weeks plus a 2-week tournament. Match times range anywhere from 5:30 to 8, 5:30 to 8. Cost is $35 per team, and registration deadline is December 18th. You can register online at our website. It's a quick rundown of what's taking place at the golf courses year-round. Be happy to entertain any questions you may have. Okay,
Thank you,
thank you very
Matt.
much.
Okay, on to the board action segment of your agenda. We do have 2 items for you tonight that will require a motion, if you will, to set a date of a public hearing, but first we'll tell you about them. The first one is the naming of the Union Park East and West shelters that was brought to us by the representatives from the Union Park Neighborhood Association, as well as one of our current board members, Kellen Rogers, is here to my right. If you'd like to say anything, feel free.
Well, this is a project we've had in the works for several months. We couldn't think of anyone more devoted to our neighborhood than Bill and Nellie Ritchie and Margaret Swanson. And we feel it's just a fitting memorial to their memories to name the East and West shelters finally, after these folks who gave so much volunteerism to the city.
Very well said. It also helps us a lot as that's one of our larger parks, so when you have an event there, you are able to tell your party gatherings where to go instead of go to the East or West shelter. It's a large park, and they're very close proximity to each other, so this will help with getting the directions to those facilities. And hopefully maybe another public-private partnership that we can upgrade those shelters that are in need of an upgrade.
And we are looking at setting the date for the public hearing for Monday, December 16th, which will be our next board meeting. And be aware that that is not our usual board meeting time. It is on a Monday, and it is the 16th. So do I have a motion for setting the hearing for the 16th?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Great. The next item is, we do have a couple of speakers here. We've been working with the Rotary to build a great, one-of-a-kind playground on our Riverwalk. The location, they'll show you on a map here real shortly, is right outside of Wells Fargo where the new Women of Achievement pedestrian, the big white bridge, ends, to the north of that. If John or if Phil would like to come up and say a few words and introduce yourselves, come on up and say a few words about the project.
Good evening and thank you. My name's Phil Hodge and I'm representing RDG Planning and Design.
And my name is John Bauslog. I'm an attorney here in Des Moines. I'm a Rotarian. I'm a member of the Rotary Club of Des Moines AM, and we're happy to be here making a proposal for your consideration where 8 Rotary clubs here in our community have banded together to raise $500,000 to build a new park along the Riverwalk. So I'll defer to Phil or Jessica to tell you a little bit more about it.
I'm Jessica Fernandez, a landscape architect with RDG Planning and Design.
We were under the understanding that you'd already seen the pictures.
They have.
We have them here to project if you want them, but
Why
I
don't we
think we're here
project
tonight.
those just for the viewing audience and our crowd tonight so they can see that. and we'll
Okay,
come up
good.
there for you.
Director Page, would you like us to navigate through those?
Why
Or?
don't you just tell them where the location is again
Yeah,
and then show them
yeah.
the pictures of what we're trying to build here.
Yeah, the burgundy colored kidney shape down at the bottom of the triangular park and on the west side of the newest bridge is where our project site is. Relatively small site, yes, thank you. Along Second, down the hill, and at the southern extension of the road that I think is going to be discontinued over time. But so we have a very very intimate site right at the bottom of that sidewalk that extends on through. What you see here is the result of literally 8 years of planning, so we're really happy to be standing in front of you today. The fundraising, all to John's credit, has been very successful. We've had great participation from Rotarians all across the District 6000, so they've raised $500,000 to do this park. And when we first started this idea, I think everyone believed we'd just buy some stuff off of a shelf and plop it down on some soft turf. That obviously is not what the Riverwalk calls for or excites the soul. So this was a labor of love. We played with the metaphors of the river theme and the Rotarian messages and doing good for the community, and came up with the design that you see here. The extension of the Riverwalk sidewalk runs all the way through, but we have a soft play surface, landing surface underneath what is going to appear like a fishing pole with a bobber. And that bobber is spun aluminum, 12 foot in diameter. So it'll be a play structure that they can climb on and jump off of onto a 2.5 inch thick rubber surface that looks like, it'll be 3 different colors. It looks like rippling water. And then a stamped concrete boardwalk, if you will, that comes towards the river, and then some sitting stones or limestone that will be used for benches and rotary identification. We do have swings coming off of if you will, the fishing pole, one of which is planned to be a handicapped accessible swing. We do have a sitting wall along and into the bank so that we could get some extended soft surface on the west side of the sidewalk, and appropriate signage as it's going to be identifying the Rotary Riverwalk Park, and then the 4-way test messages that Rotary puts forth. And I think probably a universal message: is it the truth? Is it good for all concerned? Do you make goodwill and better friendships? And is it beneficial to all concerned? Some simple messages that Rotarians believe in. So all told, very simple but elegant, I think, park. The bank comes right up to the edge, and so the donor cubes will help define the edge of the boardwalk.
So as part of our process and the city council policy for naming, this has to go forward in a larger agreement that will encapsulate, should you still recommend, the naming rights to the city council, but also passing liability during construction. We go through a very long process, and the Rotary's been great to work with, and our attorney's been great to work with. We're there, I think, to say that, except for this last step to get through the naming rights. We'll go to council as soon as we can wrap this process up with your recommendation, either way it ends up being, and we'll move it forward. And to me, this is another reason why Des Moines is a great place to live. Just this year, we're at $1.1 million in playground gifts. If you look at this group at $500,000, the Ashley Oakland folks at $500,000, and I'm rounding up a little bit, but Rebuilding Together, Columbus, done tremendous work in our community. People really care about Des Moines and the quality of life we have, and this Rotary group is no different. They've been awesome to work with, and we thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here tonight and for your wonderful design concepts, too.
Well, thank you. Thank you. We're here to answer any questions. We need to acknowledge Kevin Tubbs, who is representing the Graham Group, Graham Construction Group as well. They're going to be responsible for keeping it at $500,000. All of the donors are asking for that, so Kevin Tubbs is here to answer any questions if you have them. So
It's truly a turnkey donation. They build it, design it, do all the liability, and then they turn it over to the city. So it's a great donation.
Is this the spring start?
yes, as soon as frost comes out of the ground.
Thank you
Thank
so
you
much.
very much.
Thank you.
The motion to,
May I have a motion for the public hearing, which again will be on December 16th at our next meeting?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
on the cemetery's fees, there's no new information from last month. It was your receiving file last month, so we're glad to answer any questions you have tonight, now that you've had about 30 days to look at those.
Are there no further questions? Rebecca, call the roll for that.
Yep.
Rebecca, would you call the roll, please?
Nolan,
Yes?
Ogle,
Yes.
Clubb,
Yes.
Bacto?
Yes.
Haney Vanderhaar?
Yes.
Davis?
Yes.
Cahill?
Yes.
Hansa?
Yes.
Scavo?
Yes.
Thornton?
Yes.
Feltner?
Yes.
Rogers?
Yes.
Simonson?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you to our members of the Cemetery Advisory Committee that also serve on the Park and Recreation Board for very good research and really good recommendations. Next is a topic we have on the Jackson Street Bridge, also known as Southwest Fifth, and to some people, the Green Bridge. And the story, in our opinion, is a story of two bridges, and we're going to do our best to provide you all the information. We feel very confident that we've turned over every stone, and if we haven't, we really want you to tell us tonight how we can make our presentation better, or how we can add information that's pertinent to the story. The best way to do this, in my opinion, and I'm open to other ideas from our board, is to let Mindy go through a presentation, and then from there we can have public comment and board member comment. If that's all right, we'll let Mindy take you through the presentation.
All right. Thank you, Ben. Chair Nolan, members of the board, I'm Mindy Moore, Park Planner 2. And I'm here today to explain some of the background and process that we've gone through for the Meredith Trail bridges, including Southwest 1st Street Bridge and Southwest 5th Street Bridge, which is also known as the Jackson Bridge, and as Ben said, sometimes we call it the Green Bridge. So first of all, I'll go through the history of each of the bridges. They each have their own historical significance. I'll summarize some of the past repairs, and then we have current engineering studies that specify what the needs are for each of the bridges, and then our recommendation and what the next steps are. So first of all, I want to orient everyone to what these bridges are, where they are. The yellow on this map is the Meredith Trail. You can see down in this corner over here is Grays Lake, and there's the trail going around Grays Lake. The Meredith Trail on the south side of the Raccoon River. This is the 5th Street or Jackson Avenue Bridge. About 1/3 of a mile away is Southwest 1st Street Bridge. Right here on the corner is where Mullet's Restaurant is, and Principal Park is right here. And as you head north, you get to the Principal Riverwalk, and as you head south, we have the new Des Moines River Trail. So I just wanted to make everyone aware which bridge is which and where we're at. So first, on the history for the Southwest 1st Street Bridge, originally when it was constructed in 1937, it was called the Riverside Park Drive Bridge. In 1974, it was reconstructed with some new decking. It's historically significant because it's a contributing structure to the Civic Center Historic District, which is on the National Register of Historic Places. The Civic Center Historic District doesn't have anything to do with the Civic Center. A lot of people think that when I say that, but it's actually a collection of buildings and bridges and the dams and the river walls that you see on the east and west sides of the Des Moines River, and the walls also include on the Raccoon River. So that's the building that we're in right now is one of the historic structures of the Civic Center Historic District. So we have City Hall, the Armory, the police station, the Federal Court Building, the World Food Prize Building, Polk County Administration Building, and like I said, the river walls, and at the time there were gardens. These are all representative of the City Beautiful movement that occurred at the beginning and at the turn of the century in early 1900s. And the intent, it was a nationwide, really, movement of architecture and urban design, and it was used grand, monumental, beautiful architecture intended to instill civic pride in residents. So that's why this bridge was a contributing structure to that district. It was built in that time frame. Southwest 5th Street also has some historical significance. It was constructed in 1898. It's significant for a couple of reasons. One is the architecture. It represents early urban wagon construction, and it is one of 3 remaining pin, Pratt, through trusses with 3 or more spans in an urban setting in Iowa. There are several other Pratt trusses, but a lot of times they're only 1 span and sometimes 2 spans. A truss is the part of the bridge that's above the decking, the triangular pieces that you see in the picture. Those are the trusses. A through truss means that there's a top piece to it, so you go through those trusses. Some bridges only have sides and don't have a top. So that architecture is what's significant about this bridge. There's some stories that go along with the construction of the bridge, too. First, there was the location of it. The property owner around Southwest 5th Street and the aldermen that were on the west side of the city wanted the Southwest 5th Street location for the bridge. Aldermen from the east side and the south side, or more of the east side of the city, wanted the location at East 6th Street. Ultimately, what the council decided at that time was to build the 5th Street Bridge first, and then the following year to build the 6th Street Bridge. So they came to some agreement on that. The other part of the story is with what they called combines of the bridge contractors. And what this was a form of bid rigging, which was illegal. But what they did was the bridge contractors all got together in a group and they decided who would get that bid for each bridge contract. And then whoever got that bid agreed to pay off the other contractors who did not get the bid. In this particular case, it didn't work out quite so right. What happened was another contractor decided to underbid the contractor who was supposed to get the bid according to the combine. Because of that, there was a lawsuit and an injunction was placed against the bridge, and it delayed construction for about 2 years. Ultimately, the Iowa Supreme Court declared that everything had been done correctly. The contractor who got the bid was entitled to get that bid, and it moved forward, and then in 1898. So because of these reasons, it is on the National Register of Historic Places. Now, the city does biannual bridge inspections of all of our vehicular bridges as well as all of our trail bridges. And we do those inspections, and they basically just tell us you have so much life left in this bridge, or they might tell us you need to do further inspection. So they're not a thorough, detailed inspection of each bridge. So when we did the biannual bridge inspection for the last couple of years, both Southwest 5th and Southwest 1st indicated that additional study needed to be done. And we did move forward with additional study on Southwest 5th Street Bridge first. And it's important to note, as you see from this picture, in 2007, when I-35 West collapsed in Minneapolis, that some of the standards and guidelines for inspection of truss bridges changed at that time. So when these bridges were changed into trail or pedestrian bridges, the rules in place at that time, or the guidelines then, are different than the guidelines after 2007. On Southwest 1st, just a little summary of the repairs. Actually, not a whole lot has happened other than the reconstruction in '74. In 2006, when it was converted to a trail bridge, deck repairs were made and some trail amenities with benches and lighting were added. After we got the study on, like I said, we did Southwest 5th Street Bridge study first. We knew that we also needed the study on 1st Street Bridge. We actually worked with Meredith Corporation as they were donors to the creation of the trail, and they funded the study for the Southwest 1st Street engineering study as well, the structural evaluation report. So this is the results of that report, and all of those repairs are estimated at about $1 million. When Chuck Britson does the report, they just give us a construction cost estimate, so we added about 25% to the cost for engineering along with the construction cost. Southwest 5th Street has a little bit of a longer history of repairs. You can see in 1994, it was actually a vehicular bridge and open to vehicles up through 1993. In 94, it was replaced by Southwest 3rd Street. In 1998, it was open for pedestrian use, but the trail wasn't constructed until 2004 when some additional minor repairs were made and for it to become part of the Meredith Trail. So the structural evaluation report by Chuck Britson on the 5th Street Bridge gives us a few options for what we want to, for what we can do. The first option is to do a historic restoration, so repairing the bridge that's actually there, repairing those existing trusses. That's estimated around $3.74 million. Another option would be to replace those trusses with new prefabricated trusses, and that's estimated at $1.75. The third option, to replace the entire bridge, and that would be to remove this bridge and put in a trail width bridge. So it's not replacing the same size of structure, it's replacing it with a smaller bridge. It's estimated at about $2 million. And then the fourth option would be to remove the bridge altogether, and that still is a cost of about $750,000. When we did the study for this bridge, the engineers were unable to calculate a load capacity on the bridge. And I've heard a lot of people say, well, certainly bikes and pedestrians don't weigh very much. Why can't you just say one at a time or something like that? Well, because they're unable to calculate a load capacity, they can't even confidently say that the bridge can hold itself up, let alone any additional weight on the bridge. There's areas that were heavily corroded. They were unable to inspect and there was uncertainty about past repairs that had been done. So for the safety of everyone, the bridge was closed in March of this year. Our recommendation now is to repair the First Street Bridge within the next couple of years and budget that $1.08 million. And then for Southwest Fifth Street, we do have past grant funding associated with that bridge when it was converted to pedestrian use and when it was converted into a trail bridge. So we need to discuss with those grantors and other regulatory agencies about what steps we need to go through to remove the bridge. We would budget the $750,000 for removal in about 3 years so that we can do the repairs on First Street Bridge first. In the meantime, because this is a substantial amount of time before we would have the funds in place to remove the bridge, we would accept outside fundraising efforts to complete the funds necessary to restore, repair, or replace that bridge. It's also important to note that in our current budget, we don't have the $1 million and the $750,000. So this does take changes to the current trails budget or whatever budget the funding may come from in order to fund this recommendation. So part of the reasoning for this decision or this recommendation is to look at the proximity of the two bridges. Because they are only 1/3 of a mile apart, if we were to lose one, we still have the other one to create that trail connectivity. And also because this makes the connections, like I pointed out earlier, to the Des Moines River Trail and further north. All of the purple lines on this map are other trails in our system. Another thought this is a concept that staff and others have talked about over the years. This is, if we had a choice of, if you were to build a bridge, where would you want to build one? This is the Gray's Landing area that will be developed with residential and commercial and hotel uses. And so there's always been this thought that this would help spark economic development here if this trail was built on the north side of the river and if we had a bridge to connect to Gray's Lake. So this is an idea that's always been out there that we would like to see someday have a trail connection there. So we don't have this budgeted either, but we wanted to show it to everyone that this is a concept that has been talked about. So before we can move forward, like I had mentioned, we need to review with our granting and regulatory agencies what the steps would be to be authorized to remove the bridge. And we would present a rationale for that, that being the cost of repairs, the availability of funding for those repairs, and the availability of a similar alternate connection. We would also have to determine how to acknowledge the historical significance of that bridge so that that history is remembered and retained in that area. Just like Jen's presentation showed earlier, we have a lot of needs within the park system, and those needs aren't just limited to the park system. They're throughout the city. There's infrastructure needs for our vehicular bridges as well. So considering all of those competing needs, everything competing for limited resources, that's how we've come up with this recommendation. So our next step would be to come back to Park and Recreation Board in December for a recommendation, and then to City Council in January. Done? Are there any questions for me? We also have members of the engineering department here that can answer technical questions about bridges, and I'm happy to try to answer questions. And
questions as well.
Sure. First one I have is cutting to the chase a little bit. I understand, I'm going to guess that there's a lot of interest in preserving that bridge. If you're willing to budget in 3 years in the future $750,000 to tear down the bridge, why would you not also budget in the alternative if outside resources could come up with the difference in that amount of money? Why wouldn't you budget $750,000 toward preserving that bridge?
That is the recommendation, is that our 750 from the city, and the authority that I have as director is limited on giving financial commitments, obviously. So we've met with the finance director to find when the available money could happen. The 750, to answer your question, though, can be used to match and help the fundraising effort or private effort, public-private partnership, save the bridge. But like all projects and all decisions, we have to have an end date on that decision. So if that money is available in 3 years from now, and the money hasn't been successful to be raised for the bridge, the staff recommendation would be the same, is to unfortunately put the money toward the demolition.
I guess my only comment in your staff recommendation, that does not seem clear at all in terms of the agenda heading or the synopsis. So if this is a receive and file, when this comes back, I'm wondering if you could reword that a little bit to make it clear that that 750,000 is something that could also, just to make it clear that that could go toward restoration if outside funds were available to match that.
You know, that's very easy for us to make clear. And one thing I just want to remind the board is that, and it was great that we had the city attorney here and it wasn't planned. He has been on our agenda for a while, but unfortunately, sometimes we may have different opinions. That's the beauty of the city system, our American system, is that the way we're set up right now is for you as a board to make a recommendation. Hopefully, we line together many times, but once in a while, if you have different ambitions and different thoughts, it's your opinion. That's the beauty of it. You're not going to upset your staff here. It's all right to have a different opinion than us. So what we'll do at the December 16th meeting, and I presume that if you have any different presentation than we do, we will do a very good job of articulating your opinion and your recommendation to the city council. They'll just get two if it's different than ours. Does that make sense?
Totally.
I believe we have quite a few people in the audience tonight. Is there anyone that would wish to speak to this issue? And if you would you raise your hand so we know about how many might be speaking? So we have about 4. Could you maybe line up along the side and we can spend maybe 3 to 5 minutes for each person, please?
Plan
And
to
would
be
you
brief.
state your name and address? please?
Joe Henry, 2463 East Highview Drive, Des Moines South Side. This bridge, Jackson, is a very critical bridge, especially for people who go to Grays Lake. This was a bridge that most people go when they're jogging outside of Grays Lake. And it's great for young people. The other bridge, First Street, that's great. We all remember that when we were young. But the First Street Bridge is not really for pedestrians as much. There's a bar over there. So most people with families like to go to the Jackson Bridge. And the Jackson Bridge has a great history for those of us who grew up in Des Moines, who grew up on the south side. I think that would be a shame to remove this bridge, to raise money, just remove it. There needs to be ways to save this bridge. You know, staff may be looking at a way that is a simplified way of getting rid of something, but we're a big city. We need to be preserving things. This is not rocket science, so I would urge the board that you really push hard to save the Jackson Bridge, not only for its historical relevance, but for the families, for the kids. This other path that's supposed to go from Grays over to that new development area, I mean, that's great, but again, you're going to miss the history. It's all about the history, the ideas, the things we communicate to our young people. We really need to bring that history up, and that structure is very important. So I urge that you save that bridge. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, members of the Park Board. My name is Sarah Oltrogi. I reside at 683 32nd Street, Des Moines. I am currently president of the Des Moines Historical Society, and I'm here to speak in support of saving the Southwest 5th Street Bridge, Jackson Avenue Bridge. This bridge is unique in its construction, and it's one reason it's currently listed on the National Register of Historic Places. Dating to 1898, it served wagon and vehicle traffic for nearly 100 years before the city deemed it unsafe to handle that kind of weight and considered demolishing it. The issue stirred local historians to speak out, and in 1993, a Des Moines Register editorial stated, "The rationale motivating the bridge's fans is correct. A significant part of Iowa history is retained in its early architecture, and remnants of bygone structures should not be lightly discarded, but not everything old is worth saving." The editorial prompted this response from local historian John Zeller. The Jackson Street Bridge may not be great architecture, but it is a solid piece of industrial archaeology and a monument to the age of engineering. If only for study, it may warrant preservation, especially since the original blueprints still exist. And they do exist at the State Historic Preservation Office. Both of these points are worth exploring. It's true that not everything old is worth saving, and it's also true that not everything can be saved. But that won't stop us from sending out the message that living history is only as vibrant as seen in the pieces that remain, the ones that 115 years later serve us in new and different ways. Bicyclists and pedestrians who cross the Southwest 5th Street Bridge are exposed to that history. They are the continuation of our story. They are the link between the past and the future. We oppose the demolition of the Southwest 5th Street Bridge because we believe in taking care of the things that we already have. The trail system throughout downtown has been carefully constructed and is a point of pride for those of us who live here and use it. When the Meredith Trail connected Principal Riverwalk to Grays Lake, it opened another gateway for safe and scenic recreation in the metro. The growth in downtown living is due in large part to irreplaceable historic structures adapted for a new generation. 115 years ago, who would have guessed this bridge would have been so universally relevant to life in 2013? Because of that, this bridge is as useful and appreciated now as when it was built. The Des Moines Historical Society works to promote the preservation and study of the history and heritage of Des Moines, Iowa. As with our recent involvement to save the Samuel Green Row House, a local landmark, we cannot sit by and watch another integral piece of our history dissolve to the ages. We ask for your support in saving this bridge from demolition and to work with our organization and other passionate parties to raise enough money to fund the necessary repairs and ongoing maintenance so that this bridge can continue to serve the city of Des Moines for another 115 years. With that, on behalf of the Des Moines Historical Society, we have a new program called the Centennial Certificate, which recognizes buildings, structures, people, property, organizations within the city of Des Moines that have survived 100 years or more. So we would like to present this certificate to the board and to the city on behalf of us for that recognition. Should I just? Okay.
Thank you, Sarah. Could we have a motion to receive and file the certificate that she's presented to us? A second? All those in favor? Aye.
Hello, members of the Park Board. My name is Rosanna Olson. I lived downtown for 7.5 years, and almost immediately upon moving downtown, I live at 100 Market Street in Des Moines, which is the Brown Camp Lofts, another historical building in the city. I immediately fell in love with this green bridge, as it's come to be called. I've spent a lot of time on the bridge with my grandchildren, with my children, and we have every day fallen more in love with the bridge. I noticed after the flooding in 2008 that there was a lot of debris, log jams, and so on around the bridge, and I did notify the city about that, and I was concerned about damage underneath the bridge and so on and so forth. And I think some of the debris from 2008 is still under that bridge. And it looks like there's been some negligence on the part of someone in not removing the debris that has built up there. It's, you know, even when someone has contacted them, they've chosen to ignore it. And I think KCCI or someone did a story on this in the spring about the buildup, but that buildup's been there since pre-2008. I did have trouble finding information about the bridge initially because of the name change to Jackson Street. So that in itself was, I wondered about whether that did damage the credibility. You know, why would you change the name of the bridge? It's already listed on the National Register of Historic Places as the Southwest 5th Street Bridge. So I was a little upset about that. I did a lot of research at the State Historical Society and the design aspect of it, as well as the Iowa Supreme Court decision leading up to the building of the bridge is significant in the way bridge building, you know, took place during that time. Mindy mentioned the inspection aspect of things. Pedestrian bridges are not included and are not part of those inspection standards, and there are no requirements for pedestrian bridges to be inspected at all. So it's admirable the city has done these inspections, but they're not required. The last 2 inspections were done by Calhoun, Burns and Associates from West Des Moines in 2009 and 2011. It'd be interesting to see the results of that, especially the one from 2011, and why was another $50,000 spent to do this inspection in 2012 when one had just been done the previous year. Also, would there be a bidding process? In other words, the estimates given by Shuck Britson in their 55-page report, which I've read, just includes their recommendations. So it'd be interesting to compare the 2011 and 2012 and also the, if there's a bidding process. The most recent repairs were made in 2004. And prior to that, even when it was still a vehicular bridge, the city seems to have somewhat of an agenda to get rid of the bridge. And in fact, during the process, there was, I think it might have been regarding the Southwest First Street Bridge, there was a time in the 70s when the Historical Society and the state had to step in and preserve this bridge. But that was related more to federal funding. I did talk to someone regarding the Des Moines area planning, and there is possible funding for trail, under the heading of trail development. So there is possible funding. The city would have to apply for that funding, starting in 2014. I did also speak to an engineer from West Janney. They're from Chicago. They inspected the bridge in 1994. And the quote from the engineer was, "All truss bridges of this type are fracture critical from day one." So, to toss the word around fracture critical is not really significant, because that's really the case, these bridges from day one. I guess from a personal note, I think that the city of Des Moines, when I moved here 13 years ago, one of the things that really drew me to it was the history and how the city, instead of building a lot of new schools, they renovate the old. And that really was impressive to me. You don't see that a lot of places. You see a lot of demoing and, instead of repairing the schools. And so I think that if you walk downtown, you see a lot of older buildings. The one I live in, for instance, was redone. And I would hate to, I don't think building a new bridge would be appropriate in this case, and I also don't think that we should be looking at a development in the future as, maybe a new bridge, because nothing would take the place in the history of this bridge. And so for that reason, I hope that you decide to keep it, at least for the time being. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosanna.
What was the name? I didn't catch the name.
Rosanna?
Rosanna Olson? Okay.
Hi there. Nice to see you again. My name's David Barzin, and to members of the Des Moines Park and Recreations Board, I'd like to speak on saving the 5th Street, Jackson Avenue Bridge. I live at 420 51st Street in Des Moines in a 1924 historic Tudor home that I've restored. And I'm a financial advisor is my real job, but I'm also a preservationist, and I've worked very hard to save many of the historic structures around Des Moines, and I understand all the hard work it takes to bring old buildings and structures back from the edges of extinction. The Jackson Avenue Bridge was built back when bridges over the river were not a sure thing, as many of the original bridges fell due to flooding and were washed downstream after months or years after they were built. As one of the few remaining iron bridges built to span the downtown river system, it could serve as a key and classy crossing from the new downtown residential developments to the new developing walking, biking trail system. That is, if it can be left alone long enough. As downtown continues to develop and areas around downtown continue to improve, having key access points is a key part of that to bring it all together. Having these connections to our past need to be celebrated and protected for future generations, as how many bridges can say that they were built for wagon traffic and then converted to autos and were in continued use for over 100 years. This bridge, more than most of the bridges in downtown, should have a second chance to be restored and used for another 100 years, and has a place in history of Des Moines both 100 years ago as well as today. Fundraising efforts for the old Jackson Avenue Bridge could bring in corporate donations from companies like Wells Fargo, which might want to use their Wells Fargo stagecoats for fundraising, since this vehicle might have been one of the ones that crossed this bridge when it was built. It's kind of interesting because the last time I spoke in the city council chambers was on trying to save the old Kratzer mansion at 40th and Grand, which unfortunately didn't meet the fate of being saved, but the person that built that mansion was originally a carriage builder back in the early 1900s and late 1800s. So I want to thank you for your time today, and please give the citizens of Des Moines the chance to raise the funds to allow this bridge to live well into the 21st century for all to enjoy. Thank you.
David.
Hi, I'm Dr. Mike Eberly. I'm here to speak on behalf of the Jackson Street Bridge as well. And I'm not going to take too much time because some of my predecessors here did such a good job. I would like to say that it would appear to me that the First Street Bridge is somewhat of a done deal. So I think it's important that we just break that out and concern ourselves with the Jackson Street Bridge. I'm in favor of saving both bridges for a lot of reasons. I think a key point for me, having had some meetings and discussions with others interested in this process, is that the inspections done, and I'm certainly not trying to offend anybody, but I think they were visual inspections. And I think that's pretty common. But to really know, to Sarah's point, if we can make sense out of saving this, economically or otherwise, we need a little more thorough inspection. And probably our early money should go towards that goal, to actually dig in and see. I mean, there's a lot of corrosion, I understand, and so forth, to see what the bearings in there look like and so forth. So I think that should be our first step. And we do have probably up to 3 years to get money raised, and that'll be a lot on those of us willing to try to save the bridge. But those efforts can be saved if we know for sure there's no reason to save the bridge. I mean, if it's 6 million or 8 million, then maybe we say, well, we tried. But I'm not comfortable with the level of inspection that has occurred up to this point. And certainly, I don't know anything about engineering, but I can read. So that's all I'll say at this time. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mike. I want to really thank the public for showing your enthusiasm and participating in this process. Thank you for being here tonight. We'd like to bring up some from our engineering department.
If Pam would come up and just kind of highlight what the inspection did, the reason why we inspect pedestrian bridges, although we are not required, that's correct.
Hi, Pam Cooksey, Deputy City Engineer, Engineering Department for the City of Des Moines. I wrote down some of the notes from some of the comments that were made. There is no requirement to inspect pedestrian or trail bridges. That statement is correct, but we do it because it's a good idea. I mean, we need to know what our infrastructure is and what condition it's in and how it's performing, and if repairs are needed or if there's something more we need to look into. I think Mindy's presentation also touched on, we do the biennial inspection. It makes notes of important points that we need to look into. That's what happened with the Jackson Street Bridge and the First Street Bridge. That's why we did the $50,000 study with Chuck Britson over the last year, to get more information, more test data, more inspection, a detailed review of that bridge to figure out what it would take to put that bridge back into a good state of repair and make it usable. The scope of services for Chuck Britson included not only visual inspection, but it included non-destructive testing. There was, let's see. There's non-destructive testing, UT testing, and I'm going to lose the last word, I'm sure. But there was non-destructive testing done to confirm what was the condition of some of the metal members. There's, I'm sure people have seen the reports. I know we've distributed them quite extensively. The testing, grab it, ultrasonic testing of the truss pins and magnetic particle testing of the bottom cord eye bars. That showed that there was at least one of the pins that had been cracked all the way through. The pins did, the remaining pins, 68 of them were tested of the 72. One of them was cracked all the way through. The remaining pins did not have any anomalies or indication of cracks. The magnetic particle testing, 6 random eye bar locations were looked at to determine if any cracks were present. Severe erosion of the metal was noted in the inspection report. No cracking was found. The question about the bearings, the end bearings are actually encased in concrete, so we could not inspect those. As far as the bidding process, let's see, the Chuck Britson report was an overall estimate of what their best information that they have, what it would take to repair the bridge and rehab it so that it could be serviceable. There would be the next step would be to decide which alternative to move forward with, do a further design of those improvements, and then once that bidding package was put together, there would be a public process for a public improvement project to rehab the bridge, and that would be publicly bid through the normal, state law requirements. Let's see, the fracture critical from day one, yes, that's true. The reason we use that word a lot is because that means the bridge can't stand to have any type of damage. It doesn't have a redundancy in it. That type of failure is going to fail. I mean, it's not, you don't get a second chance. So those are looked at just a little bit more carefully from the standpoint of for safety. So I think I answered most of the questions. I hope I answered most of the questions.
Does the board have engineering type questions while Pam's up here?
I have a question. Regarding the safety of the bridge, if we've closed it for walking pedestrians, wouldn't there be some danger to, say, boats that went under it also?
Potentially, sure.
Wouldn't it be
I don't
the
know that
same?
there's any boating in that area.
I don't know whether they have boating. Ben, do you know?
We have we tendency not to have any boating down there. We don't have a policy per se that I can think of. And on the Raccoon, I know we have one on the Des Moines River. There is a boat ramp there for fire rescues only. Right now, they're in Principal Park, but right now that it's not a safe place to boat. There's a simple answer: is there's a dam right there that we would never ever promote boating, swimming, any kind of water recreation down there.
And then there was only one pin that was fractured all the way through.
That's what
And the rest of them were basically, well, it's 100 and some years old. So basically, the others were old and possible to fracture.
Right, and some of them were very hard to inspect just from the standpoint of all the corrosion and all the, the aging, essentially.
Regarding the inspection, was it more than, what did we use on that inspection more than eyesight? Did we also use, what else did we use on that?
Right, there was the non-destructive testing that I mentioned, the ultra and the, I don't know why I can't remember that word, magnetic particle, ultrasonic testing and magnetic particle testing.
Okay, you're talking to someone that's trying to put toys together at Christmas time.
Well, that's why I have to keep looking up the words, so.
Okay. Thank you.
Does anyone from the board have questions for Pam or for Mindy or
I've got a
Vince?
question for her and then something I want to say later, and I'll come back to that. But in the testing and the people that you used to do that, there's a process whereby you electronically can test metals. What is that? I can't remember the term. Drawing an age-old blank. But, we've got some pretty good bridge builders in this town. And I didn't see any of their names on here. And I'm wondering why they weren't consulted. But I'll leave that at that. And I've got a few things I'd like to say.
Could I respond to that
Pardon?
quickly? Kramer was actually a sub-consultant on this project to help us do the inspection.
That means something like Jensen Construction?
Yeah. Kramer built the, what is it called? Women of Achievement. I keep wanting to call it Center Street. I'm sorry? Okay, thank you.
Okay. Can I go ahead and finish my other part? Or should I wait?
Go ahead.
Go ahead. I really appreciate those that came tonight to speak about the bridges. When I came on the board, it was my opinion that I was to be on the board for, all of Des Moines and the Metroplex and around Des Moines and the things that are in our city. I'm a strong believer in the National Register of the historic places. I've watched too many homes around town be demolished and replaced for no reason other than location and ego. I would like to have my kids and my grandkids, I take them out to different places around town and show them, where I used to do things or where I used to get in trouble. There used to be a bridge south of Ashworth Pool called Twin Bridges. You know, one of the stupid things we did as kids would walk on top of the bridge while the engines went under. You know, that was a big thrill. But, you know, I get upset when we end up talking about history and can no longer see it. And as I say, we are a representative of the whole Metroplex. And those bridges mean something to the people that live in that area, continue to live in that area, and those of us that live someplace else in town but went down to that area. And to, you know, if you were as old as I am, I'd advise you all to go home and go through your CD discs and dig out the Letterman and go to the one band called Memories. You know, what do we have left for memories when we were younger? Cemeteries? That's it. You know, Washington Monument's got a crack in it. They're going to take it down, or are they going to be able to fix it? So all the history that we can maintain and preserve and retain, I am absolutely for, and I'm sure that the board and the city council can figure out a way to go over, you know, and save those bridges. You know, we went over them every Saturday morning going to Iowa City for a football game in the older days, you know, and then you'd wait, you'd stand between the cars and stick your head out and watch for the first bridge, you know. As I say, I'm a strong believer in history and retaining what we used to have and make sure that it continues on into the future for those that come after us.
Vince, did you have some comments?
Yeah, I've got a question. The silt buildup on the south side pylons of that bridge, Jackson Street, are they exerting force that is doing damage as we sit here and speak?
I don't have the answer to that. I'd
Yeah,
have to
okay.
ask.
Why hasn't that silt and those logs been removed to the extent to where they would not be putting force against the bridge pylons? I mean, we're sitting here talking about 3 years down the road where we've had a problem for 3 years that's existed and the city has not stepped up to take care of the problem. If we're talking about a bridge that has decay in it, rust, we all know that that force is there being exerted against those pylons. It can't be good. It's just going to end up costing us more money if we don't take care of that now. Spend a nickel now to save $100 later down the road if we're going to restore this bridge. Secondly, that bridge means much more than any of us will ever know. It was a connection from downtown rail yards to the immigrant community that came to Des Moines, got off the train, walked across that bridge and settled in the lower parts of the south side. Walked back across that bridge to go to work, to go to the city market. It's a lifeline for the immigrants that started to live in Des Moines in the early 1900s. So there's a lot more history that I think than any of us really imagine. If you've got grandparents that lived on the south side or in downtown Des Moines, they walked across that bridge to buy food. They walked across the bridge to go to work. They walked across that bridge to make the hats in the hat factories. That bridge to the immigrants that came to Des Moines was much, much more than just a bridge. That bridge was a lifeline, and it sustained the city of Des Moines in its early times. So for us to sit back and say $2 million now is something we need to work on, yes, we do. Because those people and their memories and the hard work they put in to make Des Moines the town it is deserves our dedication to make sure that bridge stands. That's all I got.
Paula?
That was nicely said, Vince. That was some of the discussion that I was going to make on this bridge. I'm strongly of the mind that we should do everything we can to save the bridge. I understand we have a good start. I think city staff, I think actually the city manager it was a good thing to commission this visual study. And it's a good starting place. And I think that you would agree it is a visual study. And in this visual study, it says that they used existing plan details and our observation of the structure. And then it says specifically, a thorough hands-on inspections of the bridge, measurement of members, identifying all areas of damage and deterioration are beyond the scope of this evaluation. So we do have a good starting point, the visual one. What I would like to see us move toward is go to the next step from the visual study to have a study that would get what this report said, hands-on, outside the scope of theirs. I'd like to know a reliable load rating for the bridge. I'd like to identify crucial elements causing closure of the bridge. I'd like to analyze then whether the bridge can be repaired, and if so, what is a cost estimate for that repair? And the only way we're going to get that is another study, because obviously a visual study can't give us that. Luckily, this afternoon, we had two corporate entities, and that's a wonderful thing about living in Des Moines. It is a public-private partnership. But Meredith obviously is very concerned about closing this bridge. And by the way, they kind of wish they had known the bridge wasn't fully vetted and inspected before they put the money into it in the first place. But now they're saying, well, we'd like to help with the next step to get a hands-on study. They had invited people from Jensen Construction. Again, we've talked about them tonight. Jensen Construction volunteered, and actually they've already started the process to pay from their own funds to have two engineers from two different bridge companies that work on exactly this kind of historical preservation examine the bridge and give them, Jensen and Meredith, an estimate of what a study that builds on this visual study, would supplement this visual study, what would that study cost? And then another member at the meeting was the chairperson of the infrastructure subcommittee in the legislature. And he said, once I know what that cost is, then we could talk with the city manager and with the park board about the ability of getting RIF funds just for the study. And then, once we have that hands-on study, we'd know the load rating, and what that's going to involve is them actually taking pieces of that bridge apart and looking at it and really spending some time on it. Once we know the cost for that, then people will have to get together and decide, is it too much? Is it worth it? Is it so expensive that it's not prudent? And that, of course, is the city council's call. But I think the city, obviously, that would help it because they can't afford to do this. We all know that money's a problem and staff time's a problem, and it just, they can't do it. So what I'm going to recommend is we allow these two companies, give them our blessing to go ahead. I think they're going to go ahead anyway. But, and then if the state senator will get the money for the study, get the study, and then make our decision. It seems like we're trying to make the decision on this bridge before we have all of the information we need. I do know, I double-checked with DOT as well, because I had been told that they changed after the Minnesota bridge collapsed, they changed standards. Well, those standards don't apply to us. On the other hand, there's a totally different set of standards for vehicular, bicycle and pedestrian bridges. On the other hand, none of us wants anybody to get hurt. So it's totally reasonable. So what I would suggest is we go forward, and I'll make a motion at the next meeting. We go forward with the city, who has done a tremendous job so far, take the offer of help from public-private partners, and let's get these people up here to tell us how much a study would cost, try to get the money in the RIF fund, which the legislators at the meeting said they felt that was a really legitimate use of RIF, and then make the decision, all of us together, and particularly City Council, since it's their vote, what we want to do. So I think it's a good starting place. We got to move forward together. We got to work city and private together. And I think this is a real opportunity. And I want to publicly thank Meredith and Jensen Construction for coming forth with this idea. And hopefully it'll give us what we need in terms of data. And based on that data, we can make a decision not based on emotion on one hand, and I'm guilty of that. I want that bridge saved. But we need to know the facts. So.
Lloyd?
Well, my concern is that the decision to put in place a recommendation that would put $750,000 in place to potentially demolish that bridge in 3 years and start the process is purely a numbers function. That you looked at the cost of the First Street Bridge, what's going to cost to fix that one, and then we have this other bridge, and oh geez, that's a whole bunch of money. And what is missing from the calculus, and maybe that's the purpose of the Park and Rec Board, is the cultural significance of that bridge. I mean, I remember when that got planked over, and I'm a enthusiastic user of the trail system, of riding my bike over the bridge and think, God, how cool this is, and how this bridge is part of our cultural heritage. And the idea that before we really dig in this and find out what's going on, to start budgeting money to demolish it and start talking about people of figuring out all the regulatory loopholes we're going to have to go through to demolish a place on the National Registry, when this is something that's part of our culture. And we talk about wanting to make Des Moines a hip place to live, and we see all the restoration going down in the East Village and in the downtown area, and this is part of that. We're completely missing our purpose of what we can do to, you know, when your grad kids walk down that riverbank, wouldn't it be cool to say, you know what, I was part of an effort to save that bridge. And you know, I read that report. I saw on the high end they thought it was 3.74 million to totally restore that. Geez, can't we put our energies behind that? When there's a will of the way, if this is a priority, we can make it. If we can spend how many millions of dollars on Cal's Commons and, you know, 10 million plus to restore the Playhouse up on 42nd Street. You telling me that if the city staff and this community, citizens and corporate communities put their heads together and said, we want to make this happen, we can't make this happen, this is doable. So I think that's where the energies need to be right now, is let's see how we can save part of our cultural heritage for this community, for our future, and just shelve right now the idea of let's in 3 years budget to demolish it and start putting all the pieces in place to do that. Thank you.
Are there any other comments or questions from the board?
Is from the way people were, the speakers that we had up here, I know Joe and Sarah, Rosanna and David, I think you guys were looking at the option of going back to the full restoration. Is that what I'm getting from the speakers, rather than the I think it was the Historical Society. Sarah, I thought that you said that we would lose something if we were to take options 2 and 3, which would be tearing it down basically and remodeling it to a walking bridge. I think you were talking about fixing it up to its entirety. Is that correct? That would be our goal. Okay. All right. Good. And then, can we legally, I guess, Ann, I have a question for you. Can we legally, we can receive and file, but can we legally accept that tonight, the award from Historical Society?
Okay, all right.
Are there any other questions or comments? I do want to thank Pam and Mindy for all the work they have put in. Mindy, I thought your report was, was excellent and gave us lots of wonderful background. Thank you.
I'd like to see the Park and Rec Board maybe at the next meeting entertain a motion to create an ad hoc committee that puts together some of our citizens with city staff and some of our corporate funders to save this bridge, and let's put our energies there.
And just a piece of advice, as you can enter into ad hoc committees, that you may want to walk it to the council process before you engage the public. And again, I presume they would like to entertain the idea of saving. If there's a group out there to raise the money, I don't know why they wouldn't. But before you get the cart in front of the horse, so to speak, you might want to march it through that system. And I just want to remind the board that, this wasn't easy for staff to recommend. We unfortunately get to approach this from a less limited angle than you do. You get to look at it from any angle you want. We don't get to look outside of Parks and Recreation resources. And the video I showed you it wasn't intended to show you all the things we have in front of us, but if I'm told every year that I have a limited amount of money to make park improvements, where would I prioritize those at? And I'm not saying the bridge is the wrong answer. I'm just saying it's very difficult because I got neighborhoods that want new parks. I've got trail people that want trail things, and I've got cemetery people that want to have cemetery improvements, and then we have the folks that want to save the bridge. So very difficult to balance the priorities of the city with limited dollars. And that's simply where we're at today. It's a resource issue. We're all here because there's no money right now. But I think a few board members said it well, is Des Moines is a great place. Botanical Center raised $11 million in less than a year. The zoo put $24.8 million into the zoo in the last 3 years, and very limited dollars from the city. It can be done with the right group of people and the right passion. And I appreciate the comments from everybody, because I think that we get the message loud and clear that you want to move forward and try to save the bridge. So thank you, and understand that where we came from. It wasn't anything purely then that we have to make a recommendation as a staff board or a staff resource to our city council and to our park board.
And Ben, just to reiterate, if you didn't hear me, I think the staff and the city has done a remarkable job. We have this study. And by the way, nobody instituted the meeting today but Meredith and Jensen. So either we know what they're doing or we're left out of the process. They can meet anytime they want and do what they want. So they don't, we and city council can work with them or not, and it's obviously their call. But Des Moines has a history of public-private partnerships, and so I took it as a good sign. They're going ahead, they're working on it. But this in no way minimizes the job that Chuck Briston, is that how you pronounce it? Or the city staff or anybody else has done. It's just that we have limited resources, and we understand that. So again, instead of looking backwards, let's look forward, and I'd like to echo what Lloyd said. I would like to, next meeting, offer an amendment that just puts a period after the sentence, receive and file staff recommendation to budget repairs of the Southwest First Street Bridge within the next 2 fiscal years. That separates that issue out. We're not hung up about that issue. It needs to be repaired. I think we should just get that off the table, and then hopefully work with some private partners like Meredith and Jensen, who are going ahead with their study, and they're already securing funding for it, and tackle this bridge issue, and not have a deadline of, okay, we're going to waste time talking to regulatory agencies, or we're going to waste time. Let's just see what we're dealing with. What are the facts?
Susan, why is there a 3-year timeline? I mean, why?
Yeah.
I don't understand that.
There's really no magic behind the 3 years other than the financing from the city. The city has a limited amount of debt capacity each year. We actually borrow money every year from everything we do, and it's capital construction, whether it be a new street in front of your home, be a new library improvement, or a new park. Right now, the city goes on a 6-year plan. They budget out 6 years in advance for everything they're going to do, and the council adopts it. It's somewhat fluid. So they look at this and they said, really, we're pretty tight these next couple of years. So in year 3, we could afford $750,000, whether it be used for to save the bridge, or if we had to demolish the bridge. That's what their thoughts are behind that.
So why 3 years as opposed to 6 years?
I think that the longer you go out, the harder it is to raise money, if that is the chosen path, is that if you don't have if you have a short timeline, the urgency's there, people get it that, hey, needs to be raised now as opposed to 6 years. And then 6 years, we do have the occasional flood and log debris jam down there. And by the way, I'm told that love the instant messaging we can do right now, that Public Works did clear out the log debris this summer. I remember seeing it myself. It's cleared out. It may not be perfect. They're the ones responsible. So if somebody would get with Roseanne after the meeting and get her information so she can have the right place to call so she understands. I don't want to hear that you're not getting through. Good.
Yeah, Ben,
Yeah.
what they cleared away may have been some of the log debris, but the sand buildup in between the logs, the sediments, that settled in there in 2 years, were not addressed, and
What we'd like to do is get her in touch, and I'll get an answer for the board as well, what that plan is and how that works, but we'll make sure she gets the answer. So Mindy, if you could grab Roseanne and get her information.
And do these have to be tied in together? I mean, can't we separate out both bridge projects? Because I think if you lump them together, then it doesn't look like we're taking a significant amount of time to do the studies that need to be done for the Jackson Street Bridge. And so I'd prefer to have them broken apart and not just one or two things going to the city council as one.
Absolutely, and I heard that request earlier, and here's my response to that, is that, that can be your recommendation as a board. However, it would be unfair for me to tell the city council, if I hadn't done it like this, just presuming that we hadn't done this, is that we wanted to save this, then I came to them a few months later after maybe they have committed to save this, I can't speak for them, and say, oh, by the way, we have another $1 million problem here. They'd be very upset with me as the director of Parks and Recreation. Since these two facilities are 1/3 of a mile between each other, and they serve a general purpose together, we thought it was only fair to show the big picture. Otherwise, I think you might have some people that say, wait a minute here, you're not being fully honest with us.
Well, wait a second, Ben. Why can't you have staff recommendations permitted at the same time? One's for one bridge and one's for the other. They're two different bridges. You've lumped them together and kind of made it a numbers game. And second of all, the language in the first, second, and last paragraph seems to emphasize the removal and demolishing the bridge as opposed to the $750,000 being a potential match to attract other monies to the project. If we're going to go to Meredith and potentially get them to fund this thing, would you consider rewording those three paragraphs to make it clear that that money being budgeted, if that's what you're going to do, is matching money if it could be done? It almost seems like that the issue about outside fundraising is an afterthought, as opposed to being raising the alarm bell that, hey, if we're going to save this piece of our cultural heritage, we've got at least $750,000 we're willing to put toward it, and it just. I also would go back to, I don't know why you functionally can't present at the same time, make the same argument, but have two different staff recommendations for each bridge.
Well, Ben, and actually, won't you be sending to the city council the park board recommendations? And if we choose to recommend it in two parts, then you can identify that as our recommendation, not yours.
Absolutely.
That takes care of your problem.
That was my answer, is that we can definitely take two recommendations for it. And again, I just want to emphasize that we've had such a great relationship. Even my predecessor on this board, is that it's not our goal to have a different recommendation than you. We want to work in conjunction with you and work together. And by no means do I see this as negative. I think that it's the passion behind what you're saying. I told you how I'm coming at it from strictly the resource issue.
Sure.
You guys have the benefit of looking at the big picture and beyond the resource issue. That's great. So I'll look at the wording for Lloyd to talk about how we do this. However, the story has to be, from my office, consistent. And so far, we've told everybody this, that we are budgeting for $750,000 at either, whether it happens in the next 3 years, whether we get successful with a private-public partnership and we raise the remaining money, or that money will go toward, in our recommendation as staff, we don't have the final authority, but that money will go toward demolition 3 years from now. Again, no magic, the council could change all those things.
Sure. And I think if that were to be written exactly like you said it, probably we'd be pretty much there anyway.
We'll see what we can do.
So just one other thing I did is, since we're talking parsing language, this language talks about and accept outside fundraising efforts. And I think by that you mean fundraising efforts outside of the city, or what does that mean?
So that's a great question. Many of the successful fundraisings will point to the zoo, will point to the Botanical Center, will point to Colts Commons recently. The city is not the leader in those. And for one main reason is that when we go out to fundraise for projects in the city, the number one response we get is, well, haven't we already funded you enough with tax dollars? It's very difficult for us to say yes, but not really. So when we've been successful, we've had a private group go out and be the lead of this and make the doors and put a little bit of peer pressure on some of their constituents, some of their friends to raise the money. The city's always had a seat at the table of the core group that's out there doing that, and by no means would we not want to do that again. We need to be there with you. But in my opinion, and my best recommendation for you as a board is you don't want us at the lead of doing this because we won't be as successful.
Well, the only reason I bring that up is when you say outside fundraising efforts, I didn't know what that meant, and there are, for example, state funds available. This was passed in 2012. It's the Statewide Transportation Alternative Program Structure. It is for construction, planning, and design of trail facilities for pedestrians, bicycles, blah, blah. Another thing it's for is conversion and use of abandoned railroad corridors. 5, historic preservation and rehabilitation of historic transportation facilities. On the next page, development and rehabilitation of trailside and trailhead facilities and linkages. The key, though, there is we don't have standing to apply for that. Meredith doesn't.
Absolutely.
It
We
has
would do
to
that.
be the local government. And again, that's why I'm saying it can't be private, it can't be.
It's a private-public partnership.
It's public-private, and that's what I'd like to have reflected rather than outside, because it sounds like we can't.
Our main point was just to make sure that we weren't in the lead. But we
Yes.
understand that. We've been very successful. I want to toot our horn here for a second. When it comes to trails and pedestrian bridges, we have been very successful in getting private dollars. We know every grant available. In fact, we even got a clean air attainment grant last year for a trail because we were able to convince them that by taking cars off the roads, we could get cleaner air for Des Moines. So I don't want you to leave tonight thinking that there's millions of dollars in grants available for us. Minnie, would you briefly come up and just tell them quickly? Because Minnie's a writer of these grants, and she knows them inside and out.
Chairman Nolan, Ms. Feltner is referring to the Transportation Alternatives Program, and there are funds, both statewide and directed to the Des Moines area MPO, that we can apply for grant funds that we could apply for this project for grant funds. There's also State Recreational Trails Program. And it's just the funding available in those programs is sometimes variable or questionable whether or not they'll be funded like State Rec Trails. Transportation Alternatives Program, I believe the money that was available in the metro area was about $1 million.
Well, but again, and that was what my research concluded. However, again, the legislature funds those every year. So there sits a state senator saying, if the city government and these two people and the historical group, if we want to all work, then maybe we can get some money put into that.
And we do put in applications for all of those programs for various projects every year. Right now, I'm putting in an application for the Bill Riley Trail Bridge in Waterworks Park, as well as the Des Moines River Trail Phase 2 connection between County Soccer and Easter Lake. In the past, I've applied for the Neil Smith renovation for the northern part of the Neil Smith Trail. We just have a lot of competing needs, so we would have to prioritize this project over those other ones and apply for them.
And I would definitely defer new trails over demolishing this bridge if it meant we needed to delay by 5 years a new connector or expanding some of our trails, which I'm a huge advocate of. If this push comes to shove, because we can always build those trails later. We can't go back and bring the bridge back to life after we've killed it. So
keep in mind too that the MPO funds, the Transportation Alternative Program through the MPO, the funds that we're applying for now in 2013 are available in 2018. So we are applying several years out for those funds.
Yeah, and that was to illustrate the fact that there are lots of opportunities, lots of partnerships that we can build, and it's a huge issue and a huge project, and it's going to take everybody and all of us working together.
Absolutely.
And that includes, the outside I'd just like to take that out.
I understand.
I'd like to thank everyone for a good discussion tonight. We've had a lot of input, and I think it's very much appreciated. I know staff will go back and look at things and tweak things as they can. And can we have a motion to receive and file the information we've received?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay. Thank you. We have one other major item.
We do, thank you. It's this time of year, we always bring to the board a proposed fee, any fee changes. We've already brought you Chapter 34, which was our cemeteries. Now, Chapter 74 is regarding recreational fees. Our recreational team, led by Matt Selfter, has done some great work looking at all our fees. He's going to run over the fees with you a little bit here, talk about them, and then let you ask us questions. Remember, this is a 2-month process, and then it goes to City Council.
Can we take,
Would you want to take a quick break?
well,
Yep.
no, let's just take a minute here and, so we can,
Thank everybody.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Okay. Chair Nolan, members of the Park and Recreation Board, I'm Matt Salvatore, Interim Recreation Manager. Staff has been working on fee changes for the last several months. We've used market research and competitive analysis to determine many of the recommended changes. You received a lengthy communication outlining all of these proposed changes. I'm just going to cover the highlights tonight. You can ask questions of me at the end. And if approved, the fee changes represent an additional $28,000 to $36,000 in revenue. I'll start with golf course fees. These were unanimously approved by the Citizen Golf Advisory Committee at the October 23rd meeting. Recommendations are as follows. Add $1 per person to all categories of cart rental fees at blank golf course. Increase the 18-hole fee to up $1 at Waveland and blank golf courses. Increase the twilight fee by $1 at all 3 golf courses. Increase the cost of the unrestricted 7-day badge from $1,000 to $1,200. Increase the senior restricted badge from $430 to $450. Increase the senior unrestricted badge from $680 to $700. Increase the unrestricted individual badge with cart from $1,795 to $1,900. We also would like to add a new high school team golf category involving no less than 1 Des Moines Public Schools. There's already a fee in place for practices, which is $1 for each individual. I'd like to add that to the ordinance along with dual meet fee of $1 per person from 2:30 to 4 p.m. A tournament fee for 3 or more teams. Their start time would be from 2:30 to 4. Before 2:30, it would be $70 a team. A tournament fee between 2:30 and 4 of $10 per person. We did meet with the schools to discuss these fees, and they're all on board with what we're trying to accomplish with the high school team fees.
Would you like Matt to keep going one by one, or have you had a chance to read these? Do you want us to, we're able to stay as long as you want to stay, but I don't want to have to stay longer than you want us to stay.
I guess the only question I had is, if you projected how this affects revenue at all, are you able to do that?
Yep.
Yeah, $28,000 to $36,000.
First page on that, there's a narrative, just like your regular fee.
Cumulatively.
Did you not get one of those?
maybe I do, sorry.
Sorry.
And I could certainly, if you have specific questions about categories in the communication, I can address it like that, or if you want me to continue to go through the highlights, I can do that as well. Any direction from the board on that?
Keep going.
Okay, we'll go over these.
Okay, enclosed shelters. We're recommending to change the rental structure for enclosed shelters from 2 5-hour time blocks to 1 11-hour time block. This would save approximately $15,000 in our operating budget. We'd still utilize our customer service program to determine when shelters need to be opened and closed. The enclosed rental rates would have to be adjusted to reflect the time block change. And we also are recommending a weekday holiday rate. Recommended fee for Ding Darling air-conditioned heated enclosed shelter is $240 for holidays and weekends, which would be Friday through Sunday, and $200 for weekdays, which would be Monday through Thursday. The recommended fee for the Grandview air-conditioned heated enclosed shelter is $160 for weekdays, $200 weekends, holidays. The recommended fees for Greenwood, Pioneer, McRae, and Union Parks enclosed shelters are $80 for
weekdays and $100 on weekends and holidays. And if approved, our director would make these new enclosed shelter rates eligible for the GRAS program, scholarship program, which would qualify those eligible for a 50% discount. I'll move on to next category, Gray's Lake Overlook Terrace. Currently,
I
those are.
think, Matt, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt,
Sure.
but has everybody read this? Sorry, but Vince asked and got up and left, so I don't know about anybody else, but I don't need to read through them because I read my packet, so.
Yes, I read.
Yeah, I've read. Yeah, if there's any,
Okay.
at this time, I could just answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Matt. It looks like a lot of work.
It was.
Set those.
I just wanted to also make you aware that we're really looking at county soccer too. Originally, we were bringing a proposal forward. There's a variety of people that use county, from the CVB with state and local high school tournaments to AAU teams to recreational groups. One thing we ran into is some disagreement, if you will, on some of the fees. So we've pulled it back. We're going to slow it down a little bit. But we are moving forward one way or another because we have a subsidy issue at county soccer. Right now, that facility is being subsidized by $220,000, and that's a problem for us. We want to make sure we can bring a package forward that's responsible, but also includes it, and it's considerate of our users. So that group is working with us, and look forward to something maybe in January with that.
Okay.
I read this total packet through, Matt, and I think you did a good job on putting that together, and it's something I wouldn't want to do. And I still think the citizens get a pretty good bang for their buck on that, on those shelters and stuff. That's at the end of the day, and that $6 rental for the walk-on fields. I mean, that's a pretty good bang for their buck too, when you can rent a whole thing for $6.
Yep.
So I think you did a good job.
Thank you, George. It was a total team effort by our staff.
This goes again, I mean, we're not there yet, but we've been asked behind the scenes to look at ways to increase revenues that are responsible, and so we're a little ahead of our curve right now because the process hasn't unveiled yet, so thank you for providing us your good input.
Any other questions for Matt? Thank you so much. Executive Board will still meet under same time next month, but on your calendar, be sure you put down for the regular meeting will be December 16th.
So Executive Board, I'm sorry.
Is when?
Second Wednesday of the month.
Second Wednesday
Are we
still.
going to be done by
And
then?
then the board meeting is.
December 16th,
Monday.
a Monday
Monday.
at 5.
Do we need to receive
Okay,
and
now
Can I
hold
just
it.
ask those that are very interested in how
do we need to receive and file that?
Beg your pardon?
Receive and file the fees? Don't
Oh, I'm
we
sorry.
need to do
We haven't
that?
done that.
All right, thank you, thank you. Do we have a motion to receive and file Matt's report?
I'll move.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Park and Rec
Thank you,
is the
Vicki.
16th.
You're welcome.
Speaking of the executive meeting, those that have a very large interest in the Jackson Bridge and how we change it from tonight until the next meeting, I would ask you to be there.
The second
That'll help us.
Wednesday.
So that's the park board meeting,
The
regular
executive park board
116.
meeting, yep.
That's the, what date now did you say that was?
It's the second Wednesday, I don't have my calendar.
December 11th.
Well, that'd be the 11th.
4:30 in this building, our normal location.
Okay.
Okay, that's the executive board meeting.
Yes,
Correct.
and regular board meetings the 16th.
16th, I have that.
Is there
Is it
anything
gonna
else?
be downstairs? or-
Downstairs.
It's not in the
Nagapon?
Kofu or
No, it's under
whatever.
construction right now.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
So we're going to meet downstairs again?
Yes,
Like we did.
Okay.
north side of the building.
Is there anything else for the good of the order tonight? Thank you for your patience, I appreciate it very much.
Thanks,
And then the
everybody.
16th,
And it's 4:30?
16th at 5 o'clock is our regular board meeting.
I'd like to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving.
Happy
And is
Thanksgiving.
there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Why would we do that?
We're having such a good time.
We were just rolling. Why would we do that?
Actually, I think it'll all work. I'm optimistic.
I am too, especially with the information that you provided today, with people that are already wanting to do another inspection, wanting to
Yeah,
supply
and
funding
pay
for
We
that.
adjourned.
Yeah. That's
We
just-
adjourned. Here's the reason why I asked that. Here's the reason why I asked that question, if it was able to accept that, was because that is our point of,
We're on the air, just FYI still, just if you want to turn your
that was
mics
our
off.
point of discussion, you know, and I wanted